Welcome to another episode of Flippin' Rich. Well, Peter, today, what we need to talk about is what makes an actual real estate fix and flip an actual deal.
Okay.
So, what's the numbers? What are some terminology that we must use? So, I think we need to start out with the value, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about a couple different ways you could look at the value of a property.
Well, the first thing, let's make sure that everybody understands there's different values, right? Mm-hmm. And when we're doing fix and flips here, we're looking at two values. We're looking the as-is value. Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, let's talk about the values. So first we're looking at as-is value, and then we're also looking at the value once we fixed it up, which is called ARV, and I know we're going to get into that, right? Now, interestingly enough, the ARV always has to be higher than what we're buying it for, right? Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, and this kind of is a little bit counterintuitive, sometimes the as-is value is not where sometimes we're even paying more than it's actually worth, because the money is made on the ARV value. Now, here's the one time where it's good to have a high as-is value. Mm-hmm. It gives you more options.
Gotcha.
Right? So if we're buying a house for $100,000, right, and as-is only $80,000, but if we put 50 into it, it's $210,000. It's a deal, right? Mm-hmm. But it's only a deal if we spend $50,000, which makes it much more risky, which makes a lot of time. But let's say we're buying the same house for $100,000, and the as-is value is $120,000. Well, that's a lot less risky deal, right? Because we know on that deal we're going to be fine. Even if we got to dump it, get rid of it.
Well, for somebody that's new, and let's just say, God forbid, something happens, and they can't get the financing for the rehab, and they have no choice but to just turn around and sell it as is, at least they don't lose money and might even be able to make, $8,000 or $8,000.
Or think about it, you're thinking it's $50,000. It's not a matter. Let's say you get the financing, right? Uh-huh. And this actually happened to me before. You remember this huge house? Remember on Lake Lanier, the 20?
Oh yeah, the one in Gainesville.
The one in Gainesville. So you remember? So we were going to do this deal, right? We were buying it for $1.1 million, and the rehab was $1 million, and the ARV was I forgot, $3 or $4 million. So initially it looked good, right? Mm-hmm. But then the contractor bailed on us. All right, the contract bailed on us. And so, you think about it, it's not just whether you get money or not, you could do the deal. A lot of other things can happen. So you always want to make sure you kind of have that fallback, if at all possible. Mm-hmm. So bottom line is this. If your as-is value is higher than your purchase price, you're a lot safer in terms of being in the deal safe, no matter what happens. Whether you get financing, whether you don't have financing. Because then the other thing you could do, you could just wholesale it, right? Then you don't have to even close on it at all. Mm-hmm. You could just flip the deal out and do
sometimes you need cash flow coming in quicker, right? A rehab, you could be looking at waiting to get your money 3, 6, 9 months from now. At least with a wholesale deal, that'll get you that cash flow, that's coming in now. Well, now we talked about values. We talked about as is, the ARV, which stands for after repair value. Once it's fully fixed up, what could it sell for? Let's talk about price ranges a little bit. And nobody wants to talk about this, but I'm a firm believer in purchasing and renovating properties more in blue-collar working class areas. I know a lot of you are watching shows on Netflix, on Discovery Channel about flipping, selling Sunrise and flipping houses here. And they're doing these huge renovations on high-end properties. Yep. Now, I definitely think there's a market for that. Don't get me wrong. This has always been my rule. And not that I get all my materials here, but I like to do a flip where I can literally pick out all of my materials from a home improvement store. Now, I know that's crazy, but you don't have to sit and wait months on a piece of material. You can go to Home Depot, you can go to Lowe's, you can go to your local home improvement store and literally find the stuff that's needed for the flip. Why do you think that's easier than what we're talking about with these multi-million-dollar homes that need special attention?
Well, let me give you again another real-life example that's actually taking place to a friend of mine. So he's building a high-end home right now, a custom home. This is going to blow your mind. The home could have been done already, right? Mm-hmm. We're sitting here, it's May, June, 7th. The home could be done. Do you know they're 26 weeks away from finishing? Wait, but you know why? It's a high-end home. It's a custom home. He can't go to Home Depot or Lowe's to get it. He had to custom order his windows. Now, look, if you forget a kitchen sink, no big deal, right? You can you put a different one in short term. You can't fudge windows, right? So he's literally had to put off the sale of his own home, had to put off a move that they had scheduled for 20 some weeks to get these windows in. So bottom line is this, there's a lot of issues you're going to run, a lot of unspoken issues, things that you don't even think about. Like right now, again, we're in a world of back orders, right? Just coming out of a pandemic, a lot of things are already slowing things down in terms of the supply chain. Well, guess what? The more expensive, the more high end, the more chance that you're not going to be able to do it. Here's the other thing you got to think about. Carrying costs. Think about if you're carrying a $100,000 home, it is very realistic on a $100,000 home to be carrying that for about $1,200 a month. If you're carrying a hard money loan, $1,200, maybe $1,500. Guess how much the carrying cost on this $1 million deal is for me?
I know how much it is, but tell everybody.
It's about $10,000.
Yeah.
Which means every 30 days extra we're sitting on it, we're going in a hole or we're knocking it off our profit $10,000. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, gosh, Pete, if you're making, $200,000, what's $10,000? You'll be shocked. You'll be shocked how quick.
$10,000 will eat up a profit real quick.
Very quick. Very, very quick. Because remember, here's the other thing, Julie, that people have to realize why we like to stay away from this high-end stuff and why, if you're a beginner, you absolutely need to. Everything is bigger at that end. People think, oh, commission. Well, yeah, commission is not a big deal on a $100,000 home. $6,000, Guess how much commission is on a $1.5 million home? So everything gets to be a lot bigger. You can wipe out $100,000 on just commission on these multi-million-dollar homes. I mean, that's like money that you just right off the top, gone. Closing costs, $100,000, $200,000 home. Yeah, we'll do a concession for $3,000 closing costs. Guess what? You're conceding tens and tens and tens of thousands.
Well, also that house is in Florida. Just to transfer a deed stamp is almost 1% of the sales price.
That's exactly right.
Let's not even talk about that deal anymore. It's going to sell. Everything's going to be great. Right.
Well, and here's the other thing, and this is a reality I faced, Julie, when I got started in this business. Most people can't afford to lose at the high-end price either.
No.
I mean, let's face it, we all take losses. You and I still, after being doing this for over a decade, still take losses sometimes, right? Well, it's one thing to take a loss of $10,000 on a $150,000 home. Kind of no harm, no foul. I mean, most people, even if it doesn't feel good, even if you don't have it right now, $10,000 could be recouped, over a fairly short period of time. But when you're taking hits, upwards of like $60,000, $100,000. Let's face it, most people can't do that. I just really, as I think about it, I can't spin it in any way that I would recommend a brand new person do a high-end home.
No. And too, this is something I think about. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, right? But we're kind of in a market right now where nobody's quite sure what's going to go on. Let's say I'm renovating a property and home sales just bottom out and you're literally stuck with houses. I still want to be able to, if I had to, rent those houses out.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Okay?
Right. So
the more expensive of the home, and this is generally the way it looks, the less the rent. It's not unheard of to have a $150,000 house, a $250,000 house, where you're getting $1,500 to $2,500 a month in rent.
Yep.
So your rent is more than your payments.
Yep.
You got $1 million house, you're what? Going to get $3,500 a month in rent, $4,000 a month in rent, and you're barely going to cover your insurance, your taxes, the mortgage payments. At least on these smaller ones, if the hits the fan, you can at least put a tenant in there. Another point, and I think this podcast has went in another different direction, but I want to stay here, is high end versus your blue collar, your medium home price homes. If the economy goes down, and this is across the board, and home prices start going down, if a home is $250,000 or if a home is $1 million, which one of those two homes do you think is going to take the biggest hit? It could go down percentage-wise the same amount,
Yep.
but the percentage is a lot higher on a $1
Yep.
million home or $2 million home than it is a $250,000 home.
Yep.
So let's say we've got house 1 at $250,000, we got house 2 at $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
The market goes down 10%. That's what? 25,000 on 250 and 100,000.
100,000. Yep. No brainer.
So that's another way to look at that. So
Yep.
do you think being in the right areas is something that you should look for whenever you're flipping your first, your second, your 10th house?
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. We say that real estate the way we teach real estate to all our partners is we teach them it's a numbers-driven business, but those numbers will be affected by the area, right? Like for instance, there's this deal right now we're doing in Vero Beach, right? So we bought it for 90, we put 75 into it, so we're into it for about 160, 170, and we have it in market for 270. So great spread in a $100,000 deal. We're making $100,000. And yesterday I'm talking to a realtor. We got an offer like within an hour on it, right? And we're kind of in jeopardy on that offer. And I was talking to her, and I said, well, I know we're in jeopardy in this offer. Are we in jeopardy in this deal? She goes, you're not in jeopardy, but you might be in jeopardy in getting this price. And I said, again, and I said, well, why? Area. She said, you're in one of the worst areas here in Vero Beach. She said, had you been a mile down the road, we'd not only get 270, we'd probably get upwards of 300. But where you are, you're really, really pushing.
So we like the nicest house in the neighborhood?
We're not only the nicest, but we're in a bad, bad neighborhood. She said, this is not funny. Somebody's got the money into it. It's not funny, but it's reality. She said, Pete, you could be in any window in that house and all you're seeing is junk in front of you. You know what I mean? So areas do matter. Areas do matter. Even if you could comp it, like this property could legitimately comps out at 270. No problem there. But the reality of the pool of buyers goes down. So when you are thinking, like when you're thinking a wholesale deal where you're in and out very quickly, you're not too worried because you're flipping it to investors. Investors sometimes want to fix and flip. Sometimes they want to, sometimes they want to rent. So let's face it, a lot of them are slumlords, so they want to be in rougher areas. But like when you're doing fix and flips, most families aren't like thinking, you know what, let me go into the worst part of Atlanta, right? Like when people are buying houses, I don't care what financial situation you're in, you're not thinking, well, let me just go buy in the ghetto.
And it can be different if they've got kids or they don't have kids,
No question. There's no question, which means your pool of buyer goes down, right? Your pool of buyers goes down. So yes, areas do matter. There is no question. You want to zero in into the right price point, which Julie and I just talked about, in medium and less. But I would say in a fix and flip, I would say 100%, stay away from the ghettos, right? Stay away from the worst parts of town because you're Here's the other thing why you want to stay away from in those areas. Things can go wrong in those areas. A lot more than things can go right in a $200,000 area as opposed to you're in a $70,000
Well, it's an easy target, right?
It's an easy target. People are used to kind of, the wrong people are used to being in there. So yeah, absolutely. Areas do matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this was a great episode of kind of what price range, what the different types of flips are. We hope you enjoyed this today, and we'll see you next time.